The times ahead will be radically different from those we have experienced in our lifetimes, though similar to many times before. How do I know that? Because throughout history they always have been.
Over my 50 years of global macroeconomic investing, I have learned the hard way that the most important events that surprised me did so because they never happened in my lifetime. But when I looked back, I saw that they had happened many times before in history. These painful surprises led me to study the last 500 years of history to find similar situations. I studied the ups and downs of the Dutch, the British, and the American empires. What I found was that these changes take place in a timeless and universal cycle that I call the Big Cycle. To understand what is coming at you, you need to understand what happened before you. Right now, three major forces are converging, something that hasn't happened since the 1930s. First, countries do not have enough money to pay their debts, so central banks are printing lots of it. Second, we see huge internal conflicts due to growing gaps in wealth and values. This is leading to severe political polarization between the left and the right. And third, we have a rising great power, China, challenging the existing leading great power, the United States. When these three things happen together, history shows us that we are approaching a changing world order. Let me explain how this machine works and share the lessons I learned so you can navigate the future. Let's begin by looking at how an empire rises. Every new order typically begins after a major conflict, often a war, which establishes the new leading power. Because no one wants to challenge this power, a period of peace and prosperity follows. In this rising phase, the society is productive. Leaders establish strong systems to raise the country's wealth and power. It all starts with education. History shows that before a country becomes a dominant economic power, it becomes a dominant educational power. When people are well educated, they innovate. They invent new technologies. For the Dutch Empire in the 1600s, it was the invention of ships that could travel the world, and the invention of capitalism itself to fund those voyages. For the British in the 19th century, it was the steam engine and the Industrial Revolution. For the United States in the 20th century, it was the assembly line and the computer age. As a country becomes more productive, it becomes competitive in global markets. Its share of world trade increases. To protect that trade, it builds a strong military. Now, here is the crucial turning point in the cycle. When you are the world's largest trading nation, people around the globe want to use your currency. They use it for transactions, and they use it to save their wealth. It becomes the world's reserve currency. The Dutch guilder was the world's reserve currency when they dominated trade. Then it was the British pound. And since 1944, it has been the US dollar. Having the world's reserve currency is an exorbitant privilege. Why? Because it allows the empire to borrow more money than any other country. The whole world wants to save in your currency, so they lend you money at low interest rates. This borrowing fuels a massive boom. The country feels incredibly rich. But hidden within this prosperity are the seeds of its own decline. This brings us to the top phase of the cycle. Human nature plays a big role here. As people in the leading empire get richer, they naturally change. They become more expensive. Workers demand higher wages, which makes their products less competitive compared to rising nations who are willing to work for less. At the same time, other countries copy the empire's technologies and methods. The gap between the leader and the challenger narrows. There is also a psychological shift. The generations that inherit wealth are different from those who fought to create it. They become accustomed to the easy life. They are less battle-hardened. They assume the good times will last forever. So, they bet on it. They borrow money to consume rather than to invest in productivity. This leads to financial bubbles. The empire appears strong, but its finances are deteriorating. It is spending more than it earns, and it is borrowing to cover the difference. During this top phase, the wealth generated is rarely distributed evenly. Those with capital benefit from the financial bubbles, while workers often see their wages stagnate. The rich get richer, and they use their greater resources to influence the political system to their advantage. This causes the wealth gap to widen. As long as the economy is growing, this tension remains hidden, but bubbles cannot expand forever. Eventually, they burst. This leads us to the most dangerous part of the cycle: the decline. The decline typically comes from internal economic weakness, combined with internal fighting and costly external fighting. Let's look at the mechanics of the economic downturn. When debts become very large and the economy slows down, the empire can no longer borrow the money necessary to repay its debts. The financial bubble bursts. This creates great domestic hardship. The government is forced to make a choice, a painful choice. Option 1, default on the debt. This means telling everyone who lent you money that they aren't getting paid back. This causes a depression and destroys the banking system. Option 2, print money. The central bank creates new money to buy the debt and stimulate the economy. History shows that governments almost always choose option 2. They print money. They did it in the 1930s. They did it in 2008. And they did it in 2020. Let me give you a specific example of how this works from my own experience. In 1971, I was a young clerk on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. At that time, the US dollar was linked to gold, but the US had been spending too much money on the Vietnam War and domestic programs. They had printed more paper dollars than they had gold in the bank to back them up. Countries like France noticed this and started asking to exchange their paper dollars for actual gold. The US gold reserves began to drain away. So, on August 15, 1971, President Nixon went on television and broke the promise. He ended the convertibility of the dollar to gold. Basically, the US defaulted on its promise, but they didn't call it a default. They just severed the link to gold, which allowed them to print as many dollars as they wanted. I thought the stock market would crash the next day. I was wrong. The market went up. Why? Because when you print a lot of money, the value of money goes down, but the price of assets, like stocks and gold, goes up. This action kicks the can down the road, but it creates inflation. When the value of money falls, it hurts the people who are poor. It hurts the people who have cash savings. This brings us to the internal conflict. When living standards decline and the wealth gap is huge, the conflict between the haves and have-nots explodes. People feel the system is rigged. Resentment grows. We see the rise of populism, both on the left and on the right. Populists are leaders who claim to fight for the common people against the elites. Those on the left often want to redistribute wealth. Those on the right often want to defend the traditional values and the wealth owners. This leads to political polarization. The two sides can no longer work together. They see each other as enemies rather than opponents. We saw this in the 1930s, and we are seeing it today. If this internal conflict escalates, it can lead to disorder, riots, or even civil war. The country becomes weak internally, and this internal weakness invites external challenge. This is the final piece of the decline phase, external conflict. While the dominant empire is struggling with debt and internal fighting, rival powers are rising. When a new rising power becomes strong enough to compete with the dominant power, external conflicts, trade wars, technology wars, and geopolitical struggles take place. Today, we see this with the rise of China. China has followed the same path of the rise. They improved education, they became a manufacturing powerhouse, they expanded trade, and now they are building a world-class military. The dominant power, the United States, faces a difficult choice. If the U.S. fights the rival, it risks a terrible war. But if the U.S. retreats, it loses its position and signals weakness to the rest of the world. Historically, these rivalries are very dangerous. This dynamic is often called the Thucydides trap. In the last 500 years, there were 16 cases where a rising power challenged a ruling power. 12 of those cases ended in war. The last time this sequence happened fully was from 1930 to 1945, which ended with World War II and the beginning of the American world order. Wars are terribly costly. They produce the tectonic shifts that realign the world order. Eventually, out of these conflicts, new winners emerge. The old empire, burdened by debt and defeat, loses its reserve currency status. The world loses faith in its money. When the world stops saving in your currency, the empire's power truly ends. Then, the cycle begins again. The new winners get together, set the new rules, and a new big cycle begins. So, where exactly does the United States stand in this cycle today? If we look at the indicators, the vital signs, the picture is clear. The U.S. is in the later stages of the cycle. It is still the most powerful nation, but its relative power is declining. It has massive debt and is printing money to service it. It has high internal conflict and polarization, and it faces a strong competitor in China. Does this mean we are doomed to a collapse or a war? No. The future is not predetermined. It is a probability, not a certainty. The cycle is like a biological life cycle. Just because a person is 60 years old and smokes, it doesn't mean they will die tomorrow. But it does mean their vital signs are poor, and they are at higher risk. If they change their lifestyle, they can extend their longevity. The same is true for empires. To reverse the decline or to navigate these turbulent times safely, we need to do two simple but very difficult things. First, We must earn more than we spend. We have to become productive again and fix our balance sheet. We cannot rely on printing money forever. Second, and perhaps most importantly, we must treat each other well. We have to resolve our internal conflicts through cooperation rather than fighting. If the system tears itself apart from the inside, it cannot stand against challenges from the outside. History is a roadmap. It doesn't tell us exactly what will happen next week, but it tells us the consequences of our actions. By understanding the big cycle, we can see where we are. We can stop being surprised by events that never happened in our lifetime and start preparing for the challenges that have happened many times before. The world order is changing. The tectonic plates of history are shifting under our feet. Those who understand these shifts can adapt and thrive. Those who ignore them risk being left behind. The question is not whether the cycle exists. The question is, are we wise enough to handle it?